All right, guys, before we get started, are there any questions on the homework? Any of the homework problems that y'all want to look at before we get started? Any of the homework problems y'all want to look at? Number 2? Number 3? I'm going to borrow this item for a second. I'll give it right back. All right, we're going to look at problem number 3, m squared plus m minus 90. So when we look at this here, with factoring, the first thing we need to see is there a greatest common factor between these 3 terms? And unfortunately, there is not. So we'll move on to our second step, our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Since the third term is negative, our signs are.
How does that one term that's supposed to equal the middle?
How do we get 1m?
Oh, that's what it would be.
Yeah. Since there's not a number in front of the m, it's going to be 1m.
Yeah, I feel sometimes whenever I see it there,
It throws you off.
like more of a zero.
Yes, I can see that. Any other questions so far? Now we need to look at the factors of the first and third term. So our first term is m squared. That's going to be m and m. M and m. Factors of 90. Well, we have 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 30. 4 is not a factor, but 5 is. 5 and 18. 6 and 15. 7 is not a factor. 8's not a factor. 9 and 10. Nine and 10. Which one do we want to put first? 9, 10. We can see if we need to switch it, we can. So we'll do 10m times negative 10, which will be negative 10m. 9 times n is going to be positive 9n, which will give us negative m. Since we got the correct number but wrong sign, we can flip the signs, telling us that the correct factors for this here, or the factorization, would be m minus 9 times m plus 10. Because with this setup here, we have now positive 10m minus 9m, giving us just m. Questions? Any other questions on the homework? You only have to divide if you don't have enough of them to get the last ones. Because you can graph it to get some of the solutions, but you might have to use synthetic division to get it down to something you can solve if you don't get them all. All right, guys, what we're doing today is we're continuing on with factoring. Now, this one's a little bit different because we do have a term for A. Because what we did yesterday, most of the ones we did yesterday, the number in front of x squared, m squared was 1. What we're going to be looking at today, most of those it's not going to be 1. So if we look at this one here, 7x squared minus 31x minus 20. Is there a greatest common factor between these 3 terms? No. So then we move on to our next step, our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now we need to find the sign. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. All right, guys. Focus up here. Focus up here. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So here the third term is negative. So our signs are going to be opposite. One's going to be positive, one is going to be negative. Now that we found the signs, our fourth step is to find the factors of the first and third term that we're going to plug in and check. Now the first term, we have 7x squared. Well, the x squared part, its factors are going to be x and x. Factors of 7 are half of that. Because the only factors of 7 are 1 and 7. 7's prime, so it only has one set of factors, and since there are only one set of factors, we can just plug those in. Now the factors of 20, there are a few more with it. As we do still have 1 and 20, we also have 2 and 10. 3 is not a factor, but 4 and 5, and those are all of our factors. Now the question is which set of factors do we want to try first for factoring this here? 2 and 10? Okay. Let's do 2 and 10. And then we're going to check this here. So we have 7x times negative 10, which will be negative 70x. And then 2 times x is going to be plus 2x. And negative 70x plus 2x, negative 70 plus 2, will give us negative 68x. So what we can do is we can take and flip the 2 and 10. And try this again. So now we have 7x times negative 2, which is going to be negative 14x. And 10 times x is going to be plus 10x. And negative 14x plus 10x is going to be negative 4x. So 2 and 10 might not work. We tried them in both sets. So it's another set we could try instead of 2 and 10. Four and 5. Colors. 4, 5. And we can try this again. 7x times negative 5 is going to be negative 45. Not 45. Negative 35x. And 4 times x is going to be plus 4x. Is that the middle term we wanted? So 7x plus 4 times x minus 5 are the correct factors for this here. So on some of these here, it does take us a few more tries to get to what we want, or what we need to get. Questions on this so far? Let's look at this next one here. 2b squared plus 17b plus 21. Looking at these three terms, is there a greatest common factor between them? No. Since there's no greatest common factor between these three terms, all right, guys. We'll have our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. All right, guys. Now, we need to find the sign. Since the third term is positive, the signs are going to be the same and match the sign of the middle term, which is also plus. So here we're going to have plus and plus. Our next step is to find the factors of the first and third term. So our 2b squared and 21. Well, 2b squared, well, the b squared term, its factors are going to be b and b. Factors of 2 are, well, 1 and 2. Since there's only one factor, set of factors for 2, we can just plug those in. 2 in front of one of the b's. We can put 1 in front of the other or just leave it as b, because 1b or b is the same thing. Now for our factors of 21, 1 and 21 and 3 and 7. Now the question is, which one do we want to try first? 3 and 7. 7, 3. Because at this point here, we just need to plug them in and then check to make sure we got the correct factors. So here, 2b times 3 is going to be 6b. 7 times b is going to be plus 7b. 6b plus 7b, 6 plus 7 is going to be 13b. That's not quite the middle term that we wanted. So what we can do is switch the 3 and 7 and try again. 2b times 7, 2 times 7 is going to be 14b. 3 times b is going to be plus 3b. And 14b plus 3b is 17b. Giving us 2b plus 3 times b plus 7. Questions on this here?
Why is the 2 only go for one spot?
So yeah, so the question is, why is the 2 only in the one spot here and not in both? And that's, so partly what we're doing here is finding the factors of that first term. So 2b squared. So we're saying what multiplies together to give us 2b squared. Well, b squared will have b and b. And then the 2 is 2 and 1, so we'd have 2b and b. Really, we could say 1b, but 1b and b we don't necessarily have to write. Yes. Now we could have, there is a case in some cases where it could be 2b and 2b, but for this to work, we would need 4b squared, because we need those factors of 4. Does that make sense? Because again, this is what we're doing today is not much different than what we did yesterday, but it is helpful to kind of see where that a is not 1 and see how that breaks apart. Any other questions? Let's look at this one here. Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? The 7, yes, because 7 and 28 do have a common factor of 7, but not 45. Yeah. 7 times 6 would be, yeah, 7 times 6 is 42. And 7 times 7 is 49.
I like how funny it is. Sometimes the simpler math is harder to do. Even
Yes.
sometimes counting stuff is harder than like stuff.
Yes, I agree, because a lot of times I second guess myself on 7 times 6 and 6 times 8. 48, yeah.
I remember with the
Sometimes there's little nice tricks to remember in. Questions on this so far? Let's find the sign. Third term is negative, so the signs have to be opposite. Now we need to find the factors of the first and third term.
is
128, 2 and 14, 3 doesn't work, 4 and 7. Now we don't necessarily have to start with 28 or 7x squared because we could start with 28. Which set of factors for 28 do we want to try first? 4 and 7. And our 7x squared, factors of x squared are going to be x and x. And 7 is just going to be 7 and 1. So we get this here. Questions on this so far? Now at this point here we can check. 7x times negative 7 is indeed going to be negative 49x. 4 times x is going to be positive 4x. It does indeed give us negative 45x. Any questions on this here? We kind of feel comfortable with it, we get it, understanding of it. Awesome. I want to look at this one here. Because this one here is a little bit different than what we've been doing. It is similar. Now there is no... Now, there is no greatest common factor between these three terms. Negative. So since the third term is negative, yes, the signs are going to be opposite. If the third term's positive, then the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. Now, if we look at the first term, factors of 10m squared. M squared is going to be m and m. Now 10, this is the first one we had that has more than just one in itself, one set of factors. So for 10, with our 10m squared, we have 1 and 10 or 2 and 5. Which one do we want to try first? Dos and 5. Now our 9 also has two sets of factors. We have 1 and 9 or 3 and 3. 1 and 9 or 3 and 3. 3 and 3. And we can check this here. 2m times negative 3 is going to be negative 6m. 3 times 5m is going to be plus 15m. And negative 6m plus 15m is 9m. Is that the middle term we wanted? Possibly. Now, the next thing we could do is we could try switching the 3 and 3. But 3 and 3 is not going to make a big difference here. Yeah, we can switch to 1 and 9. And we can try this here. 2m times negative 9 is negative 18m. 1 times 5m is going to be plus 5m. And negative 18m plus 5m is going to be negative 13m. We might need the 10. Because we could switch the 1 and 9 here. And if we did, it will give us a different value. Because now we'd have negative 2m plus 45m, giving us 43m. So again, it's a little bit off. 9. So there's a good chance that we are going to need 1 and 10. Where do you all want to put the 10? Second. And part of the reason we're putting it second is because here we'll have 10 times m times negative 1, giving us negative m. But then we have 9 times 10m, which is going to be plus 90m, and negative m plus 90m is 89m. And that is the middle term we wanted. Now, it's not, again, sometimes it's just plugging them in and seeing where we're at. Questions on these here? How do we feel about these here so far? Did you graph it? So you graphed this and then found the zeros? Okay. Because you should have.
Why do you guys snap the group chat? It's literally just you guys. If we did not have such a long streak, I would lose it.
I don't know how that works. I didn't put
It's if people will send me like just a bit of their hair or their wall every single day, it kills me. Like the TV screen or like your face.
If I snap someone,
Because I'll snap people in my face or I'll snap my TV. It's never just something random.
Or I'll snap if I'm doing something like funny and I feel like other people will find funny, I'll show them.
I think like my only
Or
Snapchat.
like cooking something. Last night I made homemade garlic bread.
Huh? Yeah, so you're going to list those zeros, and then you might have to do synthetic division to find the rest, because if it doesn't give you all of them. Might be based off the degree. All right. Let's look at this one here.
Ooh, I don't like that.
So we have 28 n to the fourth plus 16 n cubed minus 80 n squared. Yes, I did skip one.
Is there? Yes, there is.
There is a common factor. 4 is a common factor between 28, 16, and 80. 4 is the biggest. Now, there is another greatest common factor between these three terms. So we got the number, because 4 is the greatest common factor between 28, 16, and 80. But this is one of the first ones where we have something else in common with all three. They all have n, yes? So variables can be a part of the greatest common factor. How many n's can we factor out of all three? Because interestingly enough, it's whichever one has the smallest power. 2, because all of them have at least how many in it? Because the first one into the fourth, we have 4 n's. The second one into the third, we have 3. And the last one, we have n squared. So actually the greatest common factor for this here is actually 4n squared. We can factor that out. And this is the first one where we've had a greatest common factor include a variable. So when we factor that out, really what we're doing is we're dividing each of these by 4n squared. Now our 28 into the fourth, when we factor 4n squared out, 28 divided by 4 is 7. Into the fourth divided by n squared, if we take two of those n's away from n to the fourth, we're left with what? N squared. We had 4, we took 2 away, so we have 2 left. So 16n cubed, when we factor the 4 out of 16, we're left with what? 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. If we had 3 n's and we take 2 away, we were left with 1 minus. We need to factor the 4n squared out of 80n squared. Well, our 80 divided by 4 is what? And we factor n squared out of n squared. It just leaves us with 20 because it factors out completely. And again, just like yesterday, after we factor that greatest common factor out, we'll have our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now at this point here, the third term is 20, and its sign is minus. So that tells us the signs for our factors are going to be opposite. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. Now our factors of our first and third term, so 7n squared, factors of n squared are going to be n and n. 7 will go there. Yes, factors of 20, 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Which one of these do we want to try first? Now the middle term, would we say it's a smaller or bigger number? Smaller number, so I would lean more towards our smaller factors first, because I have a feeling 1 and 20 is probably not going to be it. So we can either start with 4 and 5 or 2 and 10. 4 or 5.
Because 7 times 5 is 35.
So we have negative 35 for our 7n times negative 5. And 4 times n would be plus 4n.
It's just plus 4.
Would give us negative 31n.
How big is 210?
4 and 5 divided by 7 is
Yes, so 4 and 5's products is getting us a little bit big, because even if we switched, yeah, yeah, so here we get negative 28n plus 5n, giving us negative 23n.
What is it? I'm thinking 10 and 2.5. Yeah, it is. It's okay.
10 and 2, we can try it next. Y'all have a preference for where the 10 and 2 go.
Give me a second. What's 7 times 2?
14.
14 plus
It'll just go ahead and minus 10.
4. Ooh, 7 minus 10, that's what, negative 3?
Because that right there will get you to negative 4 and we need a positive.
So 7n times negative 2 would be negative 14n, plus 10 times n would be plus 10n, which would give us negative 4n. So we do get the correct number, but wrong sign. So we need to switch the signs. Yes.
I felt like everything was weird because it kept showing up as negative.
Hmm. Yeah, so we just need to flip the negative away from the one that would be multiplied by the 7n. Questions on this here? All right. Let's look at this one here. 3b cubed minus 5b squared plus 2b. Is there a greatest common factor? B. Here we don't have a greatest common factor as a number, but the variable b can be factored out. All right, guys. Variable b can be factored out. So if we factor the b out of 3b cubed, we're left with 3b squared. Minus, we factor a b out of 5b squared, we're left with 5b. When we factor b out of 2, we're left with 2. Or b out of 2b.
Positive, these are both negative.
Yes. So we find the signs. Since the third term is positive, the signs are indeed the same and match the sign of the middle term. So they're both negative. Now we need to find the factors of the first and third term. So our 3b squared, well, the factors of b squared are b. And then our factors of 3 are 3 and 1. Since, again, there's only one set of factors, we can just plug those in. And factors of 2 are 2 and 1. Doesn't matter which one we put first. Okay. 2 goes first. 1 goes second. And lastly, we can check this here to see if we have the correct factors. 3b times negative 1 is negative 3b. Negative 2 times b is negative 2b, giving us negative 5b, which is the correct middle term. Questions on any of this here?
I think that one really, you just have to do the process to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to put anything in.
Because the other way we could have had it is the 2 and 1 flipped,
Yeah.
which would have given us,
So you could have had to swap it.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe negative 7, so you'd have negative 6.
mm-hmm. Because if we switch it, we'd have the 3b times negative 2, giving us negative 6b minus b. Any other questions on this here? Do we feel comfortable with these here?
Yeah. Seemed pretty simple.
Okay. I will give you all the rest of the time to work on the assignment, either this one or yesterday's.
We still have 14.
Thank you. No, I think you could. I think you did, and I don't want to make you feel bad.